Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. Today, I am going to share my review of the Castles and Crusades Reforged Castle Keeper's Guide from Troll Games. This is written by David Chenault and Stephen Chenault with Casey Christopherson and James M. Ward. This 360-page hardcover carries an MSRP of $49.99. It is available now, and if you just want to grab the PDF alone, you can do so over at DriveThruRPG for $19.99. Having said all that, let's swing on over to the other camera, because here I've got the Castle Keeper's Guide for Castles and Crusades Reforged. A few things to mention before we get stuck in. First of all, my friends over at Troll Games were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. It's important you know that. We're also not going to look at each and every page of the book, but I do want to give you a really good feel for what you're going to find inside. Then lastly, I've had people asking, how can you tell if a Castles and Crusades book is part of the Reforged line? Look in the upper left corner. If you see the 20th anniversary badge, it is a Reforged book. And we have 3 volumes out right now that are part of the Reforged line. That is the Player's Handbook, Monsters and Treasure, and this Castle Keeper's Guide. I forgot to mention the badge when I did my review of Monsters and Treasure, so I wanted to make sure I didn't forget it this time. So there you go. First thing we're going to do is take a peek at the credits page. A lot of folks worked very hard to bring this to life, so let's give credit where credit is due. As far as the Castle Keeper's Guide, it's important for you to know that this is not a core book. I do consider it a main book, but not a core book. And when I say a core book, that's something that you must own in order to run a role-playing game. That is not the case here. Everything contained within is optional or advice. So we've got a cornucopia of optional rules, world building information, and advice for the Castle Keeper to run Castles and Crusades. I'm going to say if you were to use 5% of what you'll find in this book, you will certainly get your money's worth, because there is just an absolute ton of goodness in here. If you are looking to make your Castles and Crusades game a bit more crunchy, a bit more detailed, if you want to delve a bit deeper into domain play, this is a must own. So we've got 19 chapters, all with different subjects. We're going to start off. Our first chapter is about the player characters, and it's regarding utilizing optional attributes, expanding on the various different races available for players, and so forth. Next chapter, we've got magic. And of course, if you are not a fan of Vancian magic, which is what's utilized in Castles and Crusades, we do have some other options, as well as some different approaches to magic and how to use magic and practitioners of magic in the world of Castles and Crusades. We'll get another chapter expanding equipment. This is going to get into vehicles and ships. So we've got that. Lots of new gear for the player characters to purchase. Then we move into one of my favorite chapters, and this is all about non-player characters. And it's not only about villains and merchants and the people that the player characters will encounter from time to time. You also get a lot of great information about hirelings and henchmen. Really dig this a bunch. We also get some advice on creating personalities for your NPCs. Then we get into an excellent chapter about world building. So if you are familiar with the engineering series from Troll Games, engineering castles, engineering dungeons, and the new engineering villages, you already know the Troll Lords are very adept at their world building. So we will get into a bunch of details here. We also will move into cities as our next chapter. This is another of my favorite chapters here because I happen to be a fan of urban adventuring. So we will get into the nitty gritty about cities, creating cities, the differences between various different sizes of communities. We have a bunch of maps here. We get a glossary of the various different occupations you'll find in the city, the various different businesses you'll find in the city. This is a really, really cool chapter. I like it a ton. Then we have a chapter devoted to dungeons, creating dungeons, dungeon environments, dungeon terrain, hazards and traps, how to track time in a dungeon, as well as combat in a dungeon, and how combat is different in a dungeon than just on the upper surface. And what constitutes a dungeon? It's not only a dungeon, a lot of various different locales, such as tombs and crypts and shrines and things like that, can all be considered to be dungeons. Then we'll expand more upon the wilderness with air and water adventuring. Then, of course, because Castles and Crusades is a role-playing game that's got an old school mentality, although as far as most people are concerned, Castles and Crusades is not an OSR game by strict definition, although everybody's got a different definition of the OSR, like I do. This is still a fantasy role-playing game that has an old school mentality. So one of the tenets of old school adventuring is resources, resource management, running out of resources. So we get a chapter about that. We get another really cool chapter about land as treasure. So if you are a castle keeper who enjoys domain play and your players enjoy domain play, this is a must-read chapter. We even have tables based on the player character's class and the sort of land that they'll receive as a reward or as treasure. Really, really cool. Then we'll move into a chapter that's all about war. So we get rules about mass battle, as well as sieges and siege equipment. We get into some aerial combat. We move into monsters. This is another excellent chapter with information about creating variations of monsters, monster ecology, as well as creating your own monsters. We have another chapter. Chapter 13 is the future, because of course we have a kind of set technology level for fantasy role-playing games and the world of Castles and Crusades, with optional rules for various different firearms. Then chapter 14 is advancing the game, which is really focused on how to present Castles and Crusades, how to get the most out of your games. We get a lot of advice, a lot of tips. This is another of my favorite chapters. To be very honest with you, I think this will be very, very useful for a vast majority of castle keepers out there. We get treasure. So we'll get into a few more details about treasure, optional rules. Funny enough, we wait until chapter 17 to get into combat. If you want far crunchier combat, far more tactical decision-making in combat, this is going to be for you. Myself, personally, I'm a theater of the mind sort of game master. So a lot of this is probably not stuff that I would use at my game table. But as I mentioned, if you're looking to make Castles and Crusades a bit crunchier than it is presented in the player's handbook, then you've got loads and loads of options here. Then we've got some options as far as utilizing skills. If you want to bring skills into the equation and skill packages for various different player characters, we've got that. And then our final chapter is all about character death. So the negative impact, different methods for your player characters to meet their ends. This is a pretty interesting chapter as well. I got to say, the Castle Keeper's Guide is a really, really entertaining read. And like I said, if you were to use 5% of this book, you are really getting a ton of value out of this. We're going to wrap up. We got some maps of the game world of Ende, which is where Castles and Crusades takes place. And we've got our index, and that is a peek inside the Castle Keeper's Guide for Castles and Crusades Reforged from Troll Lord Games. Let's swing back over to the other camera so I can share some final thoughts as well as my review score. Now, you might be wondering, what's the difference with this Reforged edition compared to previous print runs? And I have to say, you're not being forced to buy a new copy of your Castle Keeper's Guide. Now, with the Reforged edition, the open game license material is gone. Some of those typos and grammatical errors that just seem to carry over from print run to print run, those are also gone. We've got some new artwork. We've got some minor changes, some tweaks really, but all in all, the Castle Keeper's Guide hasn't changed dramatically. So please keep in mind, even if you purchased the original box set over 20 years ago, that Castles and Crusades is still just as viable now as it was when you bought it, because Troll Lord Games doesn't release new editions of Castles and Crusades. Mechanically, it is the same game. Now, you might recall I reviewed the previous print run of the Castle Keeper's Guide. Absolutely loved it. I thought it was fantastic. And with this Reforged edition, I absolutely love it. I think it's fantastic. I really do. As far as production quality is top-notch. Really nice paper thickness. There's a very nice paper weight. We've got a little bit of new art in the Castle Keeper's Guide. Not as much as we saw in the Reforged Monsters and Treasure, that's for sure. But we do have a little bit of a different look. Now, there is one thing that I've mentioned so far with all of these Reforged books, which is also going to be the case with this Castle Keeper's Guide, is there's a background to the paper, and sometimes the print gets a little lost in it. It's a little too dark. Now, maybe it's just my eyes, but that would be one thing I would hope to see lightened up a little bit in future print runs. But I got to say, if you are running Castles and Crusades and you do not have the Castle Keeper's Guide, even though there's a ton of optional content you don't need to have, this is a book you need to have. The advice for running the game, the world building, it is all excellent. So on a scale of 0 to 10, I give the Castle Keeper's Guide for Castles and Crusades Reforged a 9.5 out of 10. It is that good, and it really does belong in every Castle Keeper's collection. That's it for this time out. If you like the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already, and if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell, because it'll not only let you know when I share videos such as this review, it'll also inform you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit gaminggang.com for our latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are not going to find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. If you'd like to support the Gaming Gang, we do have a Patreon. The link is in the show notes. And if you want to hang with the gang, we have a brand new Discord channel you can join. That link is also in the show notes. All right. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thank you very much for watching. And until I see you next time, I certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.